You're listening to the Small Business Tech Podcast, brought to you by Frontpoint-IT, Utah's premier managed services provider. Visit us online at www.frontpoint-it.com.
I'm Dan Stanford.
And I'm Jeremy Wright.
And today we are going to be talking about Windows 10 and cloud services in general. Of course, tomorrow is a big day. Tomorrow is July 29th, and it will be the official rollout of Windows 10. So we thought we would go over just a few features of Windows 10 and what to look forward to. Some of the exciting things that will be in it is Cortana is making her presence known in Windows 10. So those of you who use the iPhone and iPads who are familiar with Siri, or on Google with, was it Google Now?
Correct.
Those voice assistants, that is coming to Windows 10. And apparently there's going to be quite a bit of integration with both hardware and software regarding this. So I can see in the future where you will be able to use Cortana for even, say, non-Microsoft products and the like.
Actually, they already have the applications in beta for Android, and then iOS will be coming out later this year as well. So you will be able to have Cortana on any other device.
Wow. Okay. Another neat thing about Windows 10 is it is going to include virtual desktops. So there's already been talk that Microsoft has taken this from Mac, and I take issue with that. It actually comes from Unix. I can remember many years ago having multiple virtual desktops on a Unix Windows X platform. But
except for, Mac is Unix, but
of course,
whatever.
Yes, deep down inside, Mac really is Unix, and you could easily argue that Windows is too.
Correct.
The kernel in Windows is built out of Unix, but virtual desktops would allow you have your normal desktop that you have. And then you can, by doing some type of motion, which I don't know, bring up a whole new desktop, and then you could have separate programs running on that, and then you can jump back and forth between them. So instead of just relying on having multiple windows on your desktop to have multiple programs, you can actually have multiple desktops running, a program and full screen, and then just jump between the desktops.
There's actually an icon on the taskbar that shows basically two rectangles that are intersecting each other, and you click on that and it'll bring up, similar to the preview window for the icons before, and it shows all four of your desktops, and then you click on whichever one you want to. Okay. It's been real standard in Linux and Ubuntu that you can be able to switch between the desktops. On theirs, it's like a keystroke, and it'll flip through, rotate different desktops.
I would bet you there's a hotkey for it too in Windows somewhere. Somehow you could do a hotkey and hop between them too. The next neat thing about Windows 10 is called Continuum. And basically what that means is applications written for Windows 10 will work on a Windows 10 phone, a Windows 10 tablet, a Windows 10 desktop, and even Windows 10 on the Xbox. So it opens up a lot of neat possibilities where you can have your program, again, if it's written specifically for Windows 10, it would be available on all sorts of different devices. Then, of course, the next big thing about Windows 10 is Edge, which is the new web browser. So Microsoft is finally moving away from Internet Explorer, the web browser, and the new one is called Edge. It is right in the same vein as Chrome and Firefox, which is a very, very good thing. Mm-hmm. And then Windows 10 will include Internet Explorer. It will be Internet Explorer 11 and will never change versions. That is the last of Internet Explorer forever and ever.
And real quick on the Windows 10 requirements. For any computer, what you need is a 1 gigahertz processor, 1 gig of RAM, or 2 gigs for a 64-bit. So pretty much any computer made in the last decade should really be okay with being able to run it.
If you're running Windows 7 now, I strongly suspect you'll be just fine with Windows 10.
Correct.
Then the last neat feature, of course, with Windows 10, I don't know, drum roll or little horns going off, I guess. The start menu is back proper.
Sort of.
Well, it doesn't inhale the entire screen like in Windows 8. So the start menu is there. It has all the things that you're used to on it, and it also incorporates the live tiles that are in Windows 8, some of those features. But, number one, it doesn't wipe out your entire desktop when you hit the start button. And of course, run and all programs and all those sorts of things are there and they're back.
It's resizable though, so you can make it take up your whole screen if you would like to.
Oh.
One of the differences in Windows 10 is even the applications run in a window no matter what. So on Windows 8, some of the core applications built into Windows go full screen, and you kind of get lost in the context of where you are, and you have to go back to the desktop. And then it wasn't until 8.1 that it was a feature to even see the icon on the taskbar to be able to click it and close it.
They kind of disappeared
so
when they were running.
In Windows 10, everything runs windowed. It has its own window. It has a context menu to be able to close it and that kind of thing. So that is a very welcome feature, in my opinion.
Agreed. And then Windows 10 is free if you own Windows 7 or Windows 8 or Windows 8.1. Starting tomorrow, you have to kind of quote unquote reserve your copy, etc. And I believe Microsoft is allowing you to free upgrade for a year from tomorrow. So you don't need to jump all over it tomorrow or anything like that. It is there and it will be available. Go ahead.
So you've probably seen the icon on your computer. It's a little Windows box, and then it says upgrade your copy. So it's starting tomorrow. The Windows insiders will get the final version, the retail version build issued out to them. And then over the next few days, the standard consumer version will be issued via Windows Update. So you're not going to get a disk. You're not going to get a USB drive. It is going to be just pushed out to your computer. You can do an upgrade in place. It's still recommended that you back up your PC before you do so. However, I will say that when I did the insider builds, I did not do that. And it went like you would expect it to. Everything went fine. Also worth noting that this version of Windows will not be shipped via DVD or CD. It'll be a USB drive or software download only.
Which makes sense. The speed of the internet, why bother? I just send it via the internet. Mm-hmm. Our plans here at Frontpoint regarding the Windows 10 rollout. At this point, we are blocking the Windows 10 update on all the machines. If you are interested and you would like to have Windows 10, please call our office and talk to us, and we can open that up for you. And then as far as rolling it out throughout entire offices, again, we just need to have a discussion about it, come up with a game plan, and do so. We are totally on board. We're more than happy to do this. We just need to do it in a controlled manner.
The pricing on it as well is the same as Windows 8. So it is $120 for the standard version, and then $200 for the professional version.
Which is about in line with what Windows has cost in the past.
Right. I think Newegg is already having it on sale, though, for $99 for the consumer home and business version. And then the professional, I think, is somewhere in that same price point.
As a side note, for those of you who are a little bit more tech savvy, when you have the upgrade, you do own the license to Windows 10. Mm-hmm. So if you decided to wipe your machine clean, go down to bare bones and rebuild it up, you still own that license to 10 and you're able to go forward. So don't feel like that it's an upgrade only license, if you will. No, it is a proper Windows 10 ownership license.
Pay attention on the Microsoft accounts when you are doing the upgrade, because they're very much linking that to everything. So you have to make sure you're signed into the computer with a local account. If you have any questions about it, give us a call. It gets very confusing and as to where you are and what you're doing with the Microsoft account versus a local account. If you have any questions about it, give us a call. We get confused with it. Surely everybody does.
We're happy to help. I think the home people from home will be just fine, but in more in the business environment where you have multiple credentials and signing on in the Microsoft account, it can get a little tricky to keep track of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So our next topic I'd like to talk about is cloud services. Now, of course, last week we spoke about Office 365, and I wanted today to go over just cloud services in general. We'll start off with some of the basics. What is cloud services, Jeremy?
Well, like we touched on last week, cloud services basically means anything that is a service or storage, any computational task that is being taken care of outside of your office by hardware that you do not own. So somebody else's server is doing the work for you. Somebody else's computer is doing the work for you. And that could be anything from a desktop that is not in your office to enterprise grade servers and mainframes doing data processing and data crunching for you. Any one of those things is cloud services, really.
Something as generic and as long-lived as AOL email or Hotmail or Gmail. Those are all cloud services. And the term cloud services only come into vogue in the last, X amount of years. But cloud services as a concept has been around much longer. Some of the pros and cons of cloud services. Why would a small business even consider using cloud services? Can you give me some pros, Jeremy?
Well, when you don't have your own hardware, you don't have to worry about any issues with failure of hardware. You don't have to worry about the cost of running that hardware. Running a server in your office 24/7 puts a bill on puts a strain on your power bill sometimes. Having that gone out of the office can help with those kind of things. However, you do have to pay for using somebody else's hardware for the same reasons. They have to pay for the power, they have to buy the hardware, that kind of a thing. But it takes some of the burden off of you because it's not your responsibility to necessarily have the upkeep of that hardware. You don't have to worry about upgrading it ever, because if you need to upgrade it, that's their job as a service provider to take care of that for you. You don't have to worry about it.
It's kind of a perpetual license. It's not a one-time license. You buy this version of this software and that's that, and then the next version you have to pay for the new version or pay for some type of maintenance plan. With a cloud service, it is just an ongoing perpetual license, so you're entitled to all the new versions all the time.
One of my favorite things about cloud services and outsourcing your hardware, as it were, is the ability to purchase more on demand and use less on demand. So if you have a huge project coming up and you need an entirely new server for a month or two as you're getting a project off of the ground, instead of having to go out and spending thousands upon thousands of dollars in not just the actual hardware and actual server itself, but in getting it installed, getting it all set up and configured and all of that kind of fun stuff that goes with that, you don't have to do that. Instead, you can purchase a month's worth of server use from a cloud service provider, and then when you're done with it at the end of that month, you can just shut it off. You don't have to pay for it anymore.
Turn it back in. Yep.
Renting servers, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Yeah. Some of the cons of cloud services, probably first and foremost, is you don't have physical access to your data. Your data could be anywhere in the United States or in the world, frankly.
Probably in multiple places, honestly.
Sure. Yes. Replicated around, etc. But your data, you don't necessarily know where your data is.
And that's a little unnerving to some people.
Another con is, of course, security and making sure that nobody else is looking at your data, snooping around. There's been a lot of talk about the NSA and what they've been up to. But also just, your service provider itself for that cloud service, what are they doing with your data? Are they looking in on it? Are they grooming it for marketing information? Or are they, grooming it just to find out more information about your company? Mm-hmm. Any of the cloud service providers would have some type of a privacy policy that you can review. The last con that I can think of is, of course, your data is linked to the internet. So if you do not have access to the internet, you do not have access to your data and your programs. That's becoming less and less of an issue, especially in the more metropolitan areas where you kind of can't get away from the internet even when you try. Some of the more rural areas, that can still be a challenge where their internet is not as reliable, nor are they able to get internet from multiple sources.
And on that same note, the speed can sometimes be an issue if you
good
don't
point.
have, depending on how many people are in your office, depending on how large your internet pipe is, it can be an issue. For the most part, most people will be okay, but if there's a special circumstance where you have 20 people and a 5 megabit connection and you're constantly pulling all of your data from a cloud service, you'd probably notice a slowdown. It's not going to be impossible, but you will notice speed issues with it. For the majority of companies out there, as long as you have decent business class internet, for the most part, you will be totally fine.
One of the other neat things about, let's, before we get into that, more neat things about cloud services, let's talk about some more specific examples of cloud services and what is available out there. One that I can think of right off the top of my head that a lot of small businesses would be interested in is QuickBooks Online.
Mm-hmm.
Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks, they have a service where you can upload your QuickBooks data straight into their cloud service called QuickBooks Online. And all of your data is now in their service online. We here at Frontpoint are actually using it. One of the neat things with it is you can access your QuickBooks data file from any device whatsoever. And it's not necessarily you can access it through a web browser, of course, and that's the way that you work on the PC. But say on an iPad or an iPhone, there are dedicated apps that you can get in and do this sort of stuff. I can't tell you how many times, I'm out and about doing other things and I think, oh, I need to make sure that I bill for this, or, oh, I need to make sure that I order that. I can now do it no matter where I am. I don't need to worry about getting back to the office, starting up the QuickBooks program, putting this information in, etc. It even has features for you CPAs out there that allow you to grant your CPA access into your QuickBooks Online so that they can look around and do that, help you out with issues. No longer do you need to copy your QuickBooks file on a little flash drive or CD and then hand it to your CPA. You just simply put in the email address of your CPA and it sends them credentials and off they run.
Right. You can also do, aside from QuickBooks Online, you can run entire servers in the cloud. So you could, in theory and in practice, I guess, even have machines no longer in your office, no servers in your office, run everything from the cloud. That can be done. There's a lot of caveats that go with it and a lot of a little bit of background work to make it happen. It's not incredibly difficult, but it requires a little bit of background work to make it work properly, but it can be done. Whether it's a domain controller server, whether it's an SQL database server, whether it's an email server, any type of server can be virtualized and run in the cloud.
Amazon offers these services. Google offers these services. I think Microsoft and Azure, they offer these services. Now let me differentiate for a moment. We have seen clients where they have moved away from not having servers at all, whether it's in the cloud or in-house. That is not a path that we recommend with Windows PCs. They do much better when they have a Windows domain controller or a Windows server among them to help control the security and control the administration of all the PCs. But you can take that Windows server and move it straight into the cloud and have it out there on the internet. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You still get that administration and the security of a Windows server, but you no longer have that box in your office, and you don't need to worry about it crashing and going down and all those sorts of things.
I guess the best way to think of it really is you're expanding your network, because the internet really is a large network. It's just everything is internet connected, and that's how the internet works. Is you're talking to one server or one service, which is a server really, and when you break it down, everything's talking to each other. But now what you've done is you've expanded your internal network outside of your office. So instead of connecting through it from a cable that plugs directly into your computer and then straight back into it, you're instead going to the internet to talk to it. And it can be very efficient and very useful. I know that some corporations, for instance, Yamaha.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
We were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
Yamaha corporate, they makers of pianos, motorcycles. They do lots of design for different things. they moved their entire enterprise into the cloud. They only have a few servers left in-house.
Doing Amazon, if I recall.
Yes,
Is it
AWS.
Amazon? Yeah, AWS.
And so, you would think that to us, that would be kind of scary because we are in charge of supporting servers. We have to help with that. And if servers are leaving per se, you would think that we would be a little terrified of that. But what it actually does is it actually frees us up to stop worrying about some of those things and work on getting better things for the clients overall. So we're able to implement, and we're no longer worried about servers, and we can focus on some technologies to help our clients do business better, as it were.
Correct. It just frees up our time from one area to help you focus on your company to do things better in other areas. I have a question for you if we're done with cloud services. Do you have anything else? Okay. Jeremy, how, this is a question that I'm asked oftentimes. How in the world can I keep track of all my passwords without using a little sticky note or some little notebook under my desk?
Okay. So every time I remote onto one of our clients' computers and they have to look up a password for some service or for something, they inevitably have an Excel file called passwords, which is probably, not to be rude, but to be a little blunt, the dumbest thing you can do. Because the first thing that any person with malicious intent is going to do on your computer is search for something called passwords. And they are, if they ever get into your computer, and that's a whole nother thing on, protecting that. But if anybody were to get access to your computer, that's one of the first things they would do is do that. So you should never store your passwords in plain text on your computer. And by plain text, I mean an unencrypted file, whether it's Excel, a Word document, a Notepad document that has your passwords in it, because you've given up the first step of security at that point. You have no longer done that. So I use something called LastPass. And LastPass is a password management program. There's many out there. They all have different features, different functions, different ways of carrying out what they do.
LastPass is one of the most popular ones that I'm aware of, and LastPass even has a business edition. So imagine as a business owner or as an office manager, you have a central password repository, and you can even control who has access to this password or that password. So for example, you could go ahead and document all the passwords in your company, even the high-level passwords for some of your applications, and then you can say, well, the partners over there, they can have access to this password, but the rest of the office staff does not. That is one example. There are, like Jeremy said, there are many other examples. The one concern about LastPass is it is cloud-based. To me, that makes me a little bit nervous on a couple of different fronts. One, again, you don't have tangible access to that data, to your password file. It is out there in the cloud. If 1Password were to go out of business, your passwords are gone. Or if LastPass were to be hacked, then they would have access to everything. Now, has that happened? No. Is it a fantastic product? Yes.
They actually, you do store a copy on your local computer.
Oh, you can?
It is stored encrypted on your computer locally.
Oh.
It's like a cache basically.
Oh, okay.
It is encrypted.
Okay.
It's not actually stored like in a file that you can access,
Okay.
but it does keep it locally so that you can have access to it if you're offline.
I was going to say, so if you're off the internet, you can still get to it.
Right.
Do we recommend LastPass? Yes. The information I was giving is more of a disclaimer, just so that you are aware of what the program is. I personally use a different program. It is more complicated, but it is more secure. If any of you are interested in that, feel free to email me, call. We can talk about it. It would take a little bit of training for me to show you how to use another program that I use.
LastPass actually they didn't get hacked, but they had a small breach about a month or so ago.
Oh.
Nobody got any passwords, but they got some of the emails addresses used for it, and they instantly set out emails which a lot of times when companies are hacked, you don't hear about it for a month or two afterwards.
Including the big guys.
Because they don't want to tell anybody that anything happened.
Yep.
They immediately sent out emails and said, you may have been compromised. Please update your master password. If you haven't, you go ahead and check it out. And they did that instantly, let everybody know. They weren't sure. They knew what happened, but it wasn't like a big deal. They got it squared away really quickly. Nobody had any ill consequences from it. LastPass, one of the things I like, it is encrypted in the cloud as well.
Correct,
they have
yes.
very high military grade encryption, whatever you want to call it. The way that it works, way I have mine set up is you install an extension on your computer, and every time you try to sign into a website, it says, do you want to save this password? And then you click save the site, you put in the username, you put in the password, and then it saves it for you under that site. If you want to log into my account, though, you have to have my cell phone and my master password in order to do it.
So you have two-factor authentication going on.
Correct. So I type in my master password, which is to access my LastPass, and then it pings my phone and says, hey, somebody is trying to sign in. Is this okay? And then I hit allow, and then it just goes right through.
Correct. That can be critical in for security also is two-factor authentication, because it's something that you know, which is your password, and it's something that you have, which is, say, your phone. And if you don't have both those items, then you can't get in.
Because even if somebody was able to get my master password, it wouldn't do them any good because they couldn't log into it because they don't have my phone. So it gives you that extra layer of security. I have that set up on every service that's possible to have it set up on, because I think it's very important to do that.
Two-factor authentication.
Correct. Number one, it gives you this extra security, but it also lets you know if somebody else tries to sign into your thing as well. If they try to type in your username, it texts me and says, here's your authentication code for this service. And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to sign into this. That's never happened. But if it were, I would have that notification. So I rather like that.
So two-factor authentication is critical. The other thing I wanted to talk about with passwords is encryption. We've been discussing that. High-grade, properly implemented encryption is virtually unbreakable. And when I say virtually unbreakable, I'm talking about things like, let's say we had every single computer in the world work on trying to crack this encryption code, and it would take, thousands of years for that to occur.
In which case the data would be useless after that.
Yes. So when encryption is done properly, you really can rely on it and know that your data is secure. For example, the iPhone, those are highly secure and they are encrypted. And Apple came out a few months ago and basically told the U.S. government to back off because they can't crack their own phones. They are so secure with the encryption in that it can't be done. And they told the government, please just stop asking us. We can't do it. And of course, now there are inquiries into it on a congressional level.
Can we take one step back really quick?
Yes.
Dan, what is encryption?
Encryption. Encryption is I don't want to get into it too deeply, but basically, okay, so my son got this little spy kit that he got from, I think it was like Chick-fil-A or something like that. And it had a little card in it, and it had all the letters of the alphabet on it. And then under each letter of the alphabet, there was a little symbol. And so you could send secret messages to your best friend using it. And so you'd look on the card and you'd see an A, and then it was a little triangle. And so if you wanted to send a secret message, you put a little triangle down for A. And so you'd come up with this letter or document, if you will, all full of nonsense symbols. And then you would hand that to them. And then, of course, they would have the same card. They could then, decrypt the message or, decipher the message. That is encryption. It takes your information and then using an encryption code, it scrambles that message into complete nonsense. And then there is a mechanism, which I won't get into, where the other end of that communication, they can have access to that same code so that they can then decipher the encrypted message that you have sent. But without that the code itself, without that decipher information, it is just a letter of nonsense. And there's no good way to crack that type of information. And so computers just have to start trying random things repeatedly, thousands of thousands, honestly, billions and trillions of times to try to figure out what the code is to decipher the letter.
And then really good encryption not only does it once, but multiple times.
Multiple times. And it does things on the encryption code itself. It will be basically a key, a number, and it's a prime number, if I recall, will be something on the factor of like 2 to the 256th power. If you want to kick that into your calculator and see how large that number is, that is, they would have to figure out what number between 0 and the end of that encryption code, which one of them actually cracks the code. There's even encryption codes that will change, that cycle. For example, Wi-Fi encryption does that, where it only stays on a particular code for a little while and then actually changes. So a bad guy would only have a matter of a minute or two to crack the code before it swaps on him.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, back to what we were going. I just wanted to throw that out there really quick on what encryption actually is, in case any of you were wondering. We were talking about how iPhones do not have a backdoor or any security breach to be able to get through on them.
I was using it as an example of when encryption is done properly, that not even the U.S. government can crack into this sort of stuff. It really can be secure, and you really can have secure information. So when you're using cloud services, when it's done properly, when you've properly vetted where it is that you're going to be putting your information in the cloud, you can rely on it, and it can be secure when done properly.
And the reason that they're not giving anybody a golden key or a backdoor, as it were, is because if you open up any kind of security hole, it allows anybody to get through.
It opens the possibility that it could be done.
Right. Even though it's only for the government or only for whoever has access to that, what that tells people with malicious intent is that there is a way to get into it, and they are going to work very hard to try to find that. If they don't do that at all, and the only key is on your phone, there's no way to do it. It can be done. It could be done potentially, but it would take a lot of work and a lot of time, and it'd just be incredibly difficult.
Okay. I think that's about it. Do you have anything else for us, Jeremy?
I think we're good for today.
Okay. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by Frontpoint, your local IT service provider. We are your outsourced IT support. We're more than happy to help you with your computer needs, whether it's replacing a mouse, fixing a desktop, to replacing servers, ongoing support, and anything that you would like in the IT field. We are here to help at www.frontpoint-it.com.
Thanks for listening and have a great day.
Thank you.